Okay, my crafty friends, so this is a requested video for some tips on colouring with alcohol markers. I'll be using Copic markers for the purpose of this demonstration because those are the markers that I use most often. But you don't have to have Copic markers. Everything that I'm telling you is applicable to any alcohol markers. Firstly, what I would recommend, my first tip before we dive into the actual colouring, is to swatch out all of your markers. I happen to have this large paper clippy type thing. I think it's from knitting, but you could use like one of those snap open book rings or whatever, really, a piece of string. But it's really important to know what colours you've got in your stash. So this actually needs updating because I've got the full set of the Copic Chow markers, the cheaper ones. The Sketch have more colours, so I've actually bought a few extra markers where I was finding, oh, there's a big jump here, I'd like a sort of a colour of this type, so I've bought some extra ones. And the way I've found that this works well for me is by cutting out these large tags. Say I've got you know, X amount of yellows, and then putting them in order. This is in order of the Copic numbers. If you're using a different system, you might just want to go by eye and sort of do it in a way like you might want to put that one nearer there because it's lighter, and that one last because it's darker, etc. If you're using, for example, the Spectrum Noir, they have a very simple numbering system. I think it's 1 to 9, and I quite like their trio brush markers because they actually pick 3 shades for you, which will go well together. And that's my sort of second tip, really, is unless you're colouring something really tiny, something the size of this or bigger, I would always use at least 3 markers. So for example, for Alice, for Alice's dress, I picked 3 blues. So I've got B00, B02 and B05. So if I go to my blues, that's blue green, which you can see there are some very bluey. Copic, it's a whole, I mean, gosh, there's many videos I'm sure online about the whole Copic system. It's these don't mean, it's not BGO9, it's 0. So the first number means something and the second number means something, but I'm not going to go into that because it's a bit complicated, and especially if you haven't got Copics, it's just a waste of time. But if you look, I picked 3 colours, these 3, which I thought, well, they'll go quite well together. And then I tested my theory by scribbling a bit of one, then the next one next to it, and then went a bit over it to see if it would blend, and then the same. Well, actually, I went from dark to light because that's the way I colour. And these 3 mix well nicely. So I would always have at least 3, and then basically you want your main colour, your middle colour, to be the colour that you want the actual dress, for example, to be, and then the lighter colour is for your highlights and the darker colour is for your shadows. That's why I said that the minimum I would have is 3, because if I was colouring a larger image, I might want an even darker colour for if there was some more like deeper shadows, and I might want a lighter colour as well. But B00 is quite light, so but you know, I might add in a darker blue, yeah, like B B28 or something if I was doing a bigger colour, or B45. So it's got more grey in it. So yeah, so I will list the colours that I've used, but what I would encourage you to do is to keep a record yourself of the colours that you like. So for me, I've got this Copic favourite colour combinations, this little book that I've started. You can also keep little things in here that you might have tried out. So when I was trying out different colour combinations for skin tones, I used this stamp, and I was trying different colour methods, and I was like, oh, that one's a bit too pink. I do quite like that one, but that's not really fair skin. That's more of a sort of a medium sort of complexion, or a tanned complexion, but that is quite a nice mix. But I wasn't sure of the E25, so that didn't make it into my final list. That was too pink for me, I didn't like it. But the colours that I did find, the one that I use most often is this second one. I use E50, 51 and 53. So there's very little difference. Well, there is difference obviously, but they go up in quite a nice way. And can you see here where it's darker over this side? So basically, the more times you go over a colour, the darker that it gets, which is something that I wanted to illustrate. So here, this is two images, the exact same Alice, but on this side, the skin, I've given it 2 coats. So it's the exact same colours, but you can see she's paler there, and here it's in the summer and she's got a tan. The blue, I've gone over twice, so you can see it's deeper. You can particularly see it here. And the hair, I've added 2 extra colours on this one to that one, because my 3 main colours rule, what I've found for hair, so if I go to blonde, so at the moment I've got 2, I've got blonde and brown. I've also got red, but that's in my head. So but blonde, I use Y21, which, even though it's a yellow, it looks like this. It's pretty close to that really. Y21, E53, so the same as is in the skin, and E35. So these 3, when used together, give that result. But then I've made a note, if I want it to be more yellowy, which you can see this one is, add in Y15, which is like, oh, okay, that's definitely a yellow. And E37, if you want the darker bits to be darker. And again, E37 is quite a bit dark. So you can see these are the differences in effect. So you might look at that and think, gosh, that's really dark, but actually when you use it in the way that I'm going to show you, it's not. And also it's not like bright yellow either, because we've used the flicking technique. So today I'm going to be showing you the flicking technique, which I use on hair, and also on like fluffy animals, and then I'm going to show you the blending technique, which I tend to use on skin and clothes and stuff like that. I also use the flicky technique on flowers, on florals, but I also use the blended technique on florals as well. You can mix and match, but obviously today, in order to make this a useful video and to give you some great tips to take away, but without boggling your mind completely, we're going to look at flicking for the hair and then blending for the skin. So I've also done, as you can see, prep work, so I can show you examples as we go along. But you can see here I've written down like bright green, denim blue, violet, pink, and then I've given examples of where I might use something. So if I go to colour something and I want the person to have grey shoes and buttons and a belt, then I know that that combination works well. And if I want to colour someone to have blue jeans, then I'll go for that combination, etc. Koalas, or W7 if you want a bit darker, but maybe too dark. So you can see it's a work in progress, this for me. And I've started again, critters, deer, fawn, these for the body and that for the face and the belly. So I had thought of doing this swatch with me video, because I've got about 10 new Copic markers that I need to add in here, with the so basically I'll cut out the tags and then cut down into, I think they're 1/2 inch wide by 2 inches. That just fits the size of my tag nicely. And I do use alcohol, the actual same cardstock that I colour onto. Don't just use cheap cardstock or not alcohol marker friendly cardstock, otherwise you're not going to get a true representation. And I do like the way that I've done it, where it's like 1 coat here, 2 coats, and then like maximum saturation, because it gives you a good idea then, because you don't actually have to have that many pens, because you can build up colour with the same marker, which is another tip. So this video, the plan for this video is it's going to be packed full of tips, so you can actually re-watch it, because you'll absorb some, and then so you'll be like, right, okay, I've got the flicking technique down, and then if you watch it again you'll be like, oh okay, so she mentioned this, that and the other. But I say, I was thinking of doing this swatch with me video, so I could give you some more tips along the way while we're doing it, because it is quite a boring activity. You're just sitting there colouring, and I was thinking maybe of doing it as a live or as a premiere. So I'm doing it, but then I'm in the comments and you can ask me questions real time. So if you would like either of those options, then do let me know in the comments below, and then I can plan that into my video schedule. So obviously this is the 3rd video in my Not Too Shabby Box of the Month series. So many of you will have found me because you've watched 1 or 2 of my other videos, but if you're not a Not Too Shabby fan and you haven't found me that way and you haven't got the kit, don't worry about it, because we're purely, it's a colouring technique video, so you don't have to have this particular stamp. Any sort of character stamp would work. Try and get a similar size, like a few inches. It's quite a small stamp. Right, so we've got our book, we've got our swatches. If we're wanting to turn it into a card and use specific patterned paper with it, then you need to have the paper pad, because then you can make sure that the colours match. Because if you coloured her up in completely different colours and went rogue, then it wouldn't match the paper pad. So you need to, that's a good tip for whenever you're going to be colouring an image. You need to make sure that it matches with the paper that you're planning on using. So I have got my cup of tea here with me. Have a swig. Next tip. If you're using alcohol markers, if you're a seasoned alcohol marker colourist, you will know that it bleeds. It does bleed, that is the nature of it. So you always need to protect your work surface. I've got this bit of plastic which came in a kit, so that's quite good. Right, let's find a blank one, because I've done so much prep work for you guys. I've taken it really seriously. So I'm going to start here, and we're going to start with the hair. So we're going to remove the two optional colours, and then we're gonna work from dark to light. So usually a stamp gives us a hint of where to start. So to me that looks like that's a parting. So and as you can see, I tend to hold all the pens in my hand. So you start off by making a few flicks around the parting area, and then at the other end as well. And you need to figure out which way of flicking works well for you. So to me, flicking towards me tends to work best. I can do it the other way as well, like this, but my strokes tend to be finer if I do towards me. So it's fine to move your image around a lot, because what we're aiming for is as finer flicks as we can get. So it's just being sort of quite light with the pen, and also remembering that we're still thinking about shadow as well with this. So obviously this is sort of going right back and behind her dress, so this area of hair is going to be a lot lighter than these areas. So then I'll put that to the end, and then I'll move on to my next colour, which is E53, and then I'll sort of try and go in between and make the strokes a bit longer. So we're going more towards the centre of her hair. Because this is like poofing out like that, I'm sort of following the line of that with the marker. And I'll try and go in between the lines that are already there. And then the next one, Y21, which it's definitely in the yellow family, obviously, and you can see it's a nice pale colour, but it's not like bang in your face yellow. Just gone on what's it a little bit, never mind. And then I've just remembered that this is hair and that's hair, so being careful. Making some light flicks, and we're just going over this again as we've just done. But you see how small this is, it's like I can't do it exactly the same because it's so small. So that's one layer, and I haven't covered all of it. There's still some white bits, but now I think it's about building this up a bit more. So this is the point where you could either add the darker colour if you want, the darker brown, or just build up using the same colours. You go over the same strokes if you can, but it doesn't really matter because there's the other colours in there anyway. It will look slightly different. And then we've got our E35 again. So it's E for earth tones. because funnily enough blonde does have brown, like earthy tones in it. My hair, for example, is a hairdresser's dream. It's something like base colour 9, which is basically like a dirty blonde, so it takes any colour. I can go really dark, or I can go really light. Okay, and I do think of Alice as being quite blonde, so I'm going to bring in the yellow, the Y15, so you can see what I mean. So I'm just going to add a few strokes around the middle and around the ends. You see how that lifts that and makes it much more, that she does look more of a traditional, well, not traditional, more of a yellowy blonde. Can leave white bits as well. That looks nice, doesn't it? And that's without using the darker colour. So you can see that's what it looks like adding the yellow. That's what it looks like before I added the yellow. That is this plus the yellow, and that is this plus the yellow and plus the darker brown. So the darker brown like tones it down a little bit. So we'll do that. And you can then see it's not like a scary brown. Apologies for any traffic noises. I do try and film at quiet times, but unfortunately there are some people that like to drive too fast and too loud on my little road. So I'm just going in and adding a bit more of the lighter brown. And then the E53 as well. Also, markers do need time to settle. So these that I've just shown you, I coloured these yesterday. So if you look, and I've told you that this is the same as that, once this is dry that will look like that. I'm just going to add a little bit more of this. There we go. So you might think at the moment, oh, that looks a bit really harshly contrasted with the brown and the yellow, but it will settle. And if it doesn't, then there's ways and means of fixing it. So there we go. So that is the flicking method. I'm now going to teach you another tip, which is using our magical tool, the colourless blender. So this is essentially an eraser. The name is very misleading. I first thought it meant that you use it to blend colours together. You can do that kind of, but the only time that I ever do that personally is, for example, say here you can't really see, but I've used a very pale bluey lilac called B60 just to add a bit of shadow on her white dress, and you can see I've used the same colour to go around the outside here. to give a bit of a shadow. So say if I thought that was a bit dark, I could go in and lighten, like use this to sort of lighten the transition from the B60 to the white. I do that occasionally if I think, oh okay, that colour's a bit brighter than I thought. Also, if I have over coloured something, which is something that will happen to you, or probably has happened, and you think, oh god, I've completely ruined that now. Well, what I've done in the past is I have blasted the whole thing, just to try and, because what happens is it pushes the colour. You can see here, the more layers that you use, it like pushes the colour to the back of the paper. Well, if you've gone over something a lot, you can just go over it with the colourless blender, and it bleaches out some of the colour, it pushes it through to the back. And then if you've got good quality alcohol marker friendly cardstock, you can then layer over that and save it. I've done that essentially on a card where I'd coloured this dragon pink, but I didn't have the colours in a way that I liked it, and it was either chuck the card or last ditch attempt and see if I can get rid of some of the colour and lighten it up, which I did. So you can see now that you can't actually see the yellow on the little hair tie, or you can see it very, very faintly there. So we could, if we're being persnickety like me, just go over that a little bit more. But be aware, this technique doesn't work with red. I don't know what it is about red, but if you've done a major whoopsie with red, you can't really save it. It just bleeds everywhere and looks horrible. But what we're going to move on to next is skin. So I've got my E50, my E53 and my E51. So again, working from dark to light, we shall do her skin. I forgot to mention, for the blush and this colour combination, I like E02. It's a, what is it called? Fruit pink. So we just do the fruit pink. So it's a nice like pale blush pink that you would probably have if you were a pale skinned blondie. Now actually, even this, though this has dried a bit, it's still come out darker. So I might actually so I'll probably, because of that, do 2 layers of colour on the skin, so that it looks less harsh. So you can see I've gone round all of the edges of her face in the darkest colour. Her hair would be casting shadow on her face, definitely at the top, possibly at the bottom. Sometimes I don't put it all the way to the bottom. I'll put it maybe up to there and then colour this in the lightest colour. Just for simplicity, I'm going to demonstrate it this way. So I've put the darkest colour, and now I'm using E51 to blend that out. And as you can see, I've gone straight over it actually. So I've gone right up to the black line to blend this out, because what I don't want is a brown line, or sort of a dark line, and then the next colour next to it. We want to try and avoid a stripy look. I mean, sometimes it's nice to have a bit of definition, especially under the hair, because you would see that if you look in the mirror. This is probably good to do as you go along actually. If you look in the mirror, you'll probably notice that you can see cast shadow. I forgot. So she's got a little upturned nub of a nose. So what I've been doing is just doing a little bit of the E51 there, and then a little bit of the E53, sorry, and then a little bit of the E51, because she's got a little upturned nose. And then I'm assuming her eyes are closed in this, so I'm colouring her eyelids a bit darker in the E51, and then I'm going to go in and blend the E51 out into the E50. And again, I'm sort of going over the E51 to sort of blend the two colours together, because what we want to avoid is harsh lines. Harsh lines are good sometimes for on the dress there. You can see that these are highlights. We want to see highlights. We want there to be a contrast, but when doing the face, we don't really want high contrast. So the way I've done that, it will dry to look like that. If I do another layer, it will dry to look like that. But it looks a bit blobby at the moment, but that's fine. You have to give it time to dry and to settle into the paper before, so it's best to do that and not overwork it. And I tend to do all areas of skin at the same time. So we'll do a little neck, and because this is such a small area, I'm missing out the lightest colour. The arm, there would be some cast shadow here from her the sleeve of her top, and then I'm assuming that there's going to be shadow. Well, we're not too bothered about light source with things like this. We just assume it's ambient lighting, so there's just light everywhere, so you just have to pick basically where you want your shadow to be, and sort of then work out from there, and then have the light bit. Under here, under her dress, her little legs, they're going to have cast shadow on the top, and again on one of the sides, or both of them if you want, but it's a bit too much of a small area to have shadow on both sides of her legs, in my opinion. So I say this, I'm not the goddess of Copic colouring. This is just some tips that I find help me, and I tend to get a lot of compliments in my colouring, so I am sharing with you my knowledge and what sort of works well for me. Take and leave whatever you want from this. You know, you might be watching other Copic colourists and they do things differently, so you might pick up you know, some things from one person and some things from another person. That's how I've learned. So so there we go, that's all her skin done. So I've just done the one layer for this, and as I've shown you, you can just see that if you do two layers, it's a bit darker. But I have done her hair, it seems to, you can see I've done like thicker strokes, so here I've done thinner strokes, especially here, so it probably won't dry much lighter than that actually, but I'm fine with that. But if you did want to make it lighter, you could actually go in with the colourless blender around here, lift off some of the colour and then use some of the lighter colours. That's definitely an option. So that is the blendy way of colouring. So we use the flicking to colour her hair, and then the blending to colour her skin. But what about if we used the blending to colour her hair? We can totally do that. And here's one I did earlier. So this is the main mix. So the main three colours, the E53, 35 and Y21. And then I added in the yellow. that's those 4 colours. So I did that in exactly the same way as I'd have just done the skin. So I found the areas of shadow with the cast shadow, so there'd be some round here by her face, there'd be cast shadow here and there, definitely in here, so everything where there's something in front of it that would have a cast shadow. So I went in with the darkest colour, and then I blended that out with the E53, and then blended it out with the Y21, and then used the Y15. So you can see here, for example, how we've worked out, and then that's just the Y21 there, and the same here. And I've also given her open eyes, because that's something that I've noticed that you can do with these stamps, because the eyes tend to be closed. So in order to make open eyes, all I did was use an archival ink fine liner, a very fine tipped one, and just did a slight curve underneath this bit, which also gives the effect of making her look like she's got chubby cheeks, which is really cute. And I added an extra few eyelashes, so I think that looks adorable. So again, that's just a different way to stretch the stamp. And she's still blonde, she's just a darker blonde. That's more the blonde of my hair. That's more a sort of character in a film blonde. So you can see there's just so many different ways, and it's just according to your preference or what you feel like doing on the day. If you feel like doing some flicky, do that. If you want everything blended, do it like that. So next we're going to move on to her dress and the bow in her hair. So we're going to use our bees. And just to say at this point, if you are finding value in this video and picking up some useful tips, I would love it if you would hit the like button, and then at the end of the video leave me a comment and any questions that you might have, and any suggestions for future content. Basically with YouTube, the more likes and comments you have, the more they share the video, so the more people get to see it. I'm terrible at this. I used to just I haven't had much time recently to watch YouTube videos, but when I have been binge watching videos, I would just be binging some of my favourite content creators and forgetting to like and leave a comment. But it really does help the YouTube's algorithm. So I start off with the darkest, and again this would be cast shadow here from her hair because it's coming out of her hair, and this would be cast shadow from this bit, and because it's coming out of her hair. And then I go blend, so there's some overlap, so you blend out with the next colour down in the triple, and then we go to the lightest colour. And now you'll see that there is quite a big jump actually from B00 to B02. So there's several ways that there's several different things that you could do. Oh, okay. So here, although that's just a triangle, if you think about it in real life, if that's a ribbon, it's probably got a crease in the middle. So I add a little line there for a crease. And then I use the other blue. And then I try and leave space around the edge for the lighter blue, because I want these to be quite noticeable highlights. And then this, if you can see the way that curves, that means that the highlight is going to be there. So we'll have some darker blue there. I don't think that would be as dark as that, so we'll use the mid colour for that bit. But that is where the bend is, so that's where the lightest colour needs to be. See? Now if you look at a headband, if we bring back our two Alices, so if I leave that to dry, then that will look like that. So that's just quite a bright highlight. In fact, that's a little bit too, that hasn't blended that well there, so I'm just going to go in and do that a little bit. But it's quite a distinct highlight. So if you like that look, grand, leave it like that. Or if you want to work it a little bit more, you can just do the same again, so then it would look like that. There is a secret option number 3, which is coloured pencils. So you can actually use coloured pencils to add some extra definition and shadows and highlights. It's not cheating. It's very commonly used with alcohol marker colouring. So that is another option. I don't think I'll show that in today's video because otherwise it's going to be too long. So I'm going to start with the main bit of her dress. So this is her white pinafore. So this bit, the middle bit, and that. So because that's over the top and because her hand is there, there'll be cast shadow here. And there'll be cast shadow from her little pinny. And then I would do one of two things at this point. I would either take the darker colour all the way to the edge, or I would stop a little bit before, so that can be an area of highlight. So trying to look at, so here for example, you can see I've done that. I've finished early and then I've left a highlight. I haven't done it on all of them. This one I didn't. That one I did. Or sometimes you try and leave an area and then you end up, because it is a small image, going over it. So so again, we're assuming there's, well, we're assuming the dress is curving. So apologies if my head gets in the shot here. This is obviously, we're working with the very tip of the brush here. So because it's curved, we use the colours to demonstrate that curve. And I want a highlight all the way around the edge here. So now I'm going to go in with my mid colour. I'm going in quite far because I don't want there to be any harsh lines. Oh, see, I've gone down too far, but I can probably take that out with some colourless blender. And then I'd like to leave a bit of a highlight here, and then go around the very edge with the tip. To leave a highlight. So I'm just going to get my colourless blender and see if I can take out a bit of colour here. And because it's such a pale colour, the B00, that's quite easy to do. You can also use your colourless blender to go in and add highlights. So I think we'll do that with the hair. So I'm just going over some of the darker bits. See how that's lightened up? So I'm doing this a bit on the fly actually. I hadn't planned to do this, but because the hair had turned out darker than I had initially anticipated, that's a perfect example to show you how we can remove the colour. Now if you look at the tip of the pen, you can see that that is messy, so we need to remove that colour because we don't want to be going on to something else and having that colour. So always make sure if you do remove colour that you take it off. So I'm going to just go over that again with the pale blue, and I'm going to go over this bit again with the medium blue. There we go. Then I'm going to do the very bottom of her skirt. Now this will have a lot of cast shadow from the top of the skirt, so what I'm going to make sure that there's a lot of the dark blue here. It's all going to be the darkest blue on this bit because again there's so much cast shadow. I'll do a bit of the mid colour here and just try and leave enough room for a bit of highlight. If you've got markers that have a very fine tip, you might want to use that, but to be honest I find that the brush nibs give the finest detail. I don't think you'd be able to achieve this level. Oh, you wouldn't be able to use 3 colours with a fine nib. So the only other bits of blue are the sleeves and the shoes. So the shoes I do the same way as the legs. So pick a side that's going to be darker. I'm going to do the underneath bit as well, and this leg is slightly behind that leg, so that's going to have even a bit more cast shadow. So there's no wrong way of you know, doing, like, don't worry too much about which side should be the lightest and the darkest. Just try and be consistent. Do you know what I mean? Like obviously with the legs I've made this side darker, so it makes sense that the shoes would be as well, you know. So there would be cast shadow on her sleeve from her face. So I'm doing a little bit there. And then what I've been doing, as you can see here, and this one's turned out really well, I've given her sleeve some little creases. So I've gone in the very fine little line here. Now this one's quite difficult to colour because it's just cast shadow everywhere, so don't worry too much about this side. If it's a bit where it's like, well, there's so much shadow everywhere, just do the best you can and then just try and have a bit of highlight somewhere. because there would be a bit of a highlight, but not very much. So I'll blend that out a bit, blend these out a bit, but again I don't really want to blend the creases out too much because I want them to be creases. So that's where hear the crow outside, where I would go in and do a very fine flick again of the dark blue, or I would use a coloured pencil to go in with it, like a navy blue. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I just want to blend this bit out a little bit. Yep, I like it. Okay, so she's nearly finished. The cup, I have done the cup in W1 and W0 because I have gone by the colours in the pads here. So I've gone for this looks like it's been watercoloured to me, and then this is like gold. So on here, for example, I've coloured it in yellow. Oh, I've forgotten to colour that bit, and these bits to represent gold, and then I've used I might have just used the, did I just use one colour? No, I think I used, but let me try. Let me check. I can't remember. What did I do? I think I used W1 and W0. And what I'd like to do, say I've coloured them in yellow, and then my plan was to go over them in like a gold jelly roll pen. I've got this one, this Stardust one from Sakura, I think it is. I'll show you what I mean. This one, it's like it comes out like a glittery gold that you can see, so it's not, it sort of gives like a layer that you can see when the card moves, as opposed to being like a proper gold gel pen. So I'll try a couple of different ways. I do believe I have a gold gel pen sitting next to me, so you can see that it's just a nice and shiny. Or I could use my Versamark pen and add some detail gold embossing powder. That would look really, really striking and really lovely. So that looks nice. I like that. So let's get back to our Alice. So we'll do the W1 for inside the cup. And I've just done it all the same colour because, yeah, there might be a lighter bit there, but it's so tiny. And then I'm pretty sure that I switched to the W0, so warm grey, but the palest warm grey they have. So essentially, you know, it's like a white cup. And when you have something white, you obviously need to give it some shadow, but you don't want it to be overwhelming. So I tend to use like a very pale purple or pale blue or a pale yellow, or a pale grey. And as I say, I've gone for the grey in this because that's what it is in the paper pad and the ephemera. Obviously you can use whatever colour that you would like. So you can see it's just very, very pale. Let's compare it to the other one and see. I think I might have used the W1. Look, you can barely see that. Because I might not have mentioned this, but alcohol markers always dry lighter. So again, we get the cast shadow from underneath the lip of the teacup. Will be the cast shadow from Alice's dress, and just Alice sitting on the cup. That's why we need such a light colour, because obviously it's a white cup, so we don't want the colour to be overwhelming. So this is a time where you could use the blender pen to blend some out if you think it looks a bit too heavy, or you know, go in with the W0 a bit, which is lighter. Because that will, if you use a lighter version of one colour over the other one, it tones it down a bit, it bleaches it out a bit. So okie dokie, and I did use the Y15, I think. I used the Y15. I think I tried to use two colours, the Y15 and Y11 for the teacup. And then I wasn't sure I liked that, but with the gold gel pen over the top, I do like it. So again, we are going to put, okay, well here there's going to be some cast shadow, and here, and we could put some there if we wanted to, or not. I think I'll leave it because I've put that there's light here, so I'm assuming there would be light there too. So I'm using this lighter yellow. For those bits. So there we go. She's pretty much done. Obviously, as I took a little bit of colour out of her hair, you can see it has just lightened it in certain places. So I'm just going to go back in with E35. What shall I do? Y21. Just to add a bit more colour back in, but a lighter colour. So we've lightened that up nicely. So I couldn't find the B60 and I can't bother to go back into the other room. So, but that cup does look a bit too harsh lined for me around here. So here I am going to just use a bit of the colourless blender to blend that out. So I'm quite glad that's happened, so you can see that. How to use that, just sort of gently move it at the edges and it'll just blur the edges a little bit. And also by batch sort of colouring, which is what I ended up doing for this in preparation for the tutorial, we've obviously got all of these different Alices. all using the same colours. So there we go. What's your favourite? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6? Do you have a favourite? Do you just appreciate them all for what they are? So when you've, you know, spent so much, like a decent amount of time colouring up something like this, if you have positioned it in a good position, I mean, this is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card panel. Let's see if I've got a card blank handy. I normally have. So you could just basically trim that a tiny bit, back it onto some lovely cardstock, put one of the nice big sentiments up here. I would like the that one. It's no use going back to yesterday. I was a different person then. That would look perfect there. So we've got our cute little Alice, gorgeous stamp and beautiful paper. To be honest, I think when you've spent the time colouring up an image like that, it's sometimes nice to just have a really clean and simple card with a nice skinny border of a nice background, or just pick out one of the colours like blue, or you could use maybe like a pearlescent grey or something like that. But the last thing that I'll do to our Alice that we have created together is go over the yellow in the Sakura gold sparkle pen. Could even add some highlights to her hair. It's lovely to add into hair. Just for a bit of sparkle. So there we go. Doesn't that look cute with a bit of sparkle in her hair? Yeah, also I would suggest that sentiment, heat embossing it in sparkly gold, and cutting a skinny border and popping it onto one of your favourite sheets of card in the Meet Me in Wonderland paper pad, and bish bash bosh, there you go. So that's all from me today, and I'll see you, if not before, then on the 7th of March with the YouTube hop for the stamp and die of the month for Not Too Shabby. So that will be again on my own channel on the 7th, but I might have a video up on my channel before then, who knows. But if you hit that notification bell, you'll know as soon as I upload another video. And just to reiterate, just leave me any questions or comments or anything, because I love reading them and responding and having a little natter. So I'll stop waffling on. That's all from me. See you soon with some more crafty goodness. Bye for now.